All right, guys, we are at the last part of the third part of chapter 18 for this week. We will finish up chapter 18 next week. We are going into the last two major battles of 1862. The battles of Antietam and the Battle of Fredericksburg. And both of these are very pivotal with what's going on. By September of 1862, the war has been going since July of 1861, basically April if you count Sumter. And the North is constantly losing. Abraham Lincoln has drafted up and wrote up the Emancipation Proclamation. But Lincoln has said he will not release it until he has a resounding Union victory to be able to say, hey, the Emancipation Proclamation is worth something. Because if you are losing, and you release the Emancipation Proclamation, it looks like it's a last-ditch effort. You're trying anything you can. If you are winning, and you release it, it looks like you're trying to bring the nation back together by ending the conflict, by setting all the slaves free. So he is wanting a victory. And at this point, Lee, who's been on the defensive constantly in Virginia, decides he is going to take the offensive, and he decides to go into Maryland, up into Antietam to Baltimore is where he's headed to attack that city. Because if you take Baltimore, the North is going to, several things are happening. The North is going to realize they don't have a chance of winning. And states like Maryland and Delaware will realize maybe you've chose the wrong side and will switch, and then you will have more states on your side. So Lee is two-pronged, trying to make the North quit and states to flip. So he's really wanting those states to switch sides. So he heads up into Maryland. He is gunning for Baltimore. He's taking the two-path this way. What Lee doesn't know is that a couple days before this, at a Confederate camp, there was some Union soldiers that overran it, and when the Southern soldiers ran, they found Lee's directive that he was going to head up into Maryland, head towards Baltimore, and split his army into two places and then attack. With all this information, the North then is able to head its army up to try and cut off Lee. And that's exactly what they do. They surprise attack Lee. And now Lee is on the run. McClellan is the general in charge at this point, and he starts to begin to chase them towards back down through Virginia as they're leaving through there. Lee is advancing, trying to get away. And he gets to the town of Sharpsburg at a little place called Antietam Creek. Okay? And when he gets to this town of Sharpsburg and everything, there is this massive cornfield. It's a 24-acre cornfield, which is a good-sized cornfield. And Lee's troops are on one side and the North is on the other. They know they're both in the area, but don't know they're both at the same cornfield, basically. The morning of the battle starts off with them finding out each other's there, and there's some shooting that erupts. And because of the shooting, that is going to change a few things around at the most infamous place called the cornfield. What happens is the North is going to send a battery of cannons around to one side of the cornfield, kind of at an angle. They thought that the Lee and them may attack from underneath, and so they were trying to set up a thing on the other side of the cornfield, not thinking the cornfield would be the direct problem. Antietam is going to go down. What we were about to have happen here, it is the second or third most casualties in a battle, but it is the most casualties in one day. You're going to have Gettysburg, which you're going to lose so many people, and it happened over 3 days. You're going to have another battle at Chickamauga, lose a ton of people. It's going to happen over 3 days. You've got Antietam. You're going to lose almost as many as Gettysburg in 3 hours. They're going to be dying at the rate of 1 per second at one point. To every minute, 60 people have died. Just bam, 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 bam. And they're going to fight for hours like this, just losing people left and right. What happens is this big cornfield. They know they're in the area, but it is, if you look September, you guys know from living in this area, corn is at its highest. Corn is tall at this point. You can't see each other in a cornfield. And they began to walk through the cornfield trying to find each other, but visibility is limited. You don't know where each other's at. And what happens to armies meet in a cornfield? And when they meet in the cornfield, if you've ever pictured yourself going through a cornfield, you're pushing things out of the way, you're moving through there, and then all of a sudden, bam, 5-6 feet in front of them is the other army. You're in a cornfield. The corn doesn't do anything to stop a bullet from coming out. And as soon as two armies look face to face to each other, not talking on the other side of a field, but right up in each other's face, they do the thing that they would do naturally. They pull their guns up and they begin to fire at each other. And so now bullets are going back and forth this way, all of a sudden through the cornfield. That battery of cannons that had been moved to the side at an angle hears all this and begins to open up canister shot into the field. Canister shot, it's like taking a cannon and turning it into the world's most giant shotgun. It is a canister packed full of metal balls. And when it comes out, it turns a cannon into a shotgun, and those things, just thousands of them, go flying out through there at a rapid high speed and just make people look like Swiss cheese. And so as the two armies start to slam into each other there, and now you've got cannon fire ripping through at an angle, and you've got bullets going forwards and backwards. It's September, and it's dry. The ground is parched. And you know how ground at this time will absorb liquid? People are dying so fast that the dry ground can't absorb the blood that is coming out from this battle. And there actually is a little stream of blood that starts flowing out of the cornfield and into Antietam Creek. And they said Antietam Creek for several hours ran red because so many people were dying. It just was massive amounts of people. And the people that are going to be fighting, you've got on one side, you've got the Iron Brigade, which is one of the North's most toughest units. And on the South, what was fighting for Robert E. Lee at that time was his Texas Brigade. And they were known as tough and wouldn't surrender. So you have for 3 hours almost, 2.5, these back and forth in the cornfield to where the North would advance and they're shooting each other, and then the South would advance, and then the North, and it was back and forth all in this cornfield. And it's just bullets flying everywhere. And to hit your person, all you got to shoot down is straight down a row. Somebody's going to be standing in that row. And so the people are just everywhere. At this point, the Texas Brigade finally starts to make headway and is coming up out of the cornfield. And where they're coming up out of the cornfield is right where that artillery brigade is at. The artillery brigade is going to lose 80% of its people. It's going to be down to just a few people by the time this battle's over. But they began to file double canister, packing 2 canisters in it at the same time and firing it out. You're shooting thousands of balls through the thing. The Texas Brigade that's coming through, I believe it was 76% casualty. They said people were just being vaporized. I mean, just as soon as you're coming out of that cornfield, double shot, just right through you, and there was nothing left. At this point, there's so much carnage on the field that the South is going to withdraw and try to go up to this one area. The cornfield is just a disaster at this point. The Southern Army is starting to lead its way out of the cornfield. Let's look at some pictures right here. You can see the cornfield, and that is literally what they were fighting. You can see right where Hood's Texans are coming through the cornfield. And if you look off to what on my screen is the left, you'll see over there Doubleday. And then down from it, you'll see where the Union battery was up in those trees, just firing into the soldiers that were in the field. You can see the Southern cannons at the back that were also firing into the field. So you had cannon fire from 2 different directions. You had rifle fire from every direction. And it was a massacre. That's the only way to describe it. It was a massacre. But the troops then start to flee, and they start to go across this field. As they go across this field, it dips down, and then the Southern troops are coming up the hill right there. What they didn't know was there was the Irish Brigade. They were all Irish immigrants and everything. And to make sure that their soldiers were tough and ready, they did not allow them to have rifles. Everybody in the Irish Brigade carried shotguns so that you would be right up on somebody and then you would shoot them with a shotgun. You didn't have that chance of running away. You had to get close to use your gun. So as the Southern troops are running up the hill, they come to this road. Right as they top the hill, the whole road is the Irish Brigade standing there. This road is going to get the name now, Bloody Lane, because as those soldiers come up the hill, they are literally now just 5 or 6 feet from hundreds of soldiers with shotguns. If you've ever seen what a shotgun can do up close, it's disgusting what it would do to something. And these people run to the top and they're just being waylaid. And that's why it's going to be called Bloody Lane. What's going to happen then is they try and retreat down, and there is a tiny little bridge. It's going to be called Burnside's Bridge because that's where General Burnside is going to make his stand. And Lee's troops and Burnside's troops actually clash on a bridge and begin to fight. And there is no quarter being given. They are both just at a stalemate on this bridge. This is one of the most interesting things that happens in the war right here. A soldier comes running up to Robert E. Lee and says, we can't do this. We need to get away. We need to try some other area. And they said, Robert E. Lee looked at the soldier and said, get back in there and do your job. And he sent his own son right back onto Burnside's Bridge. It was his son that was trying to tell him they need to stop. But this battle on Burnside's Bridge is ferocious, inches from each other, stabbing, punching, biting, kicking, anything you can do. And finally, the South is going to back off. The North is going to limp to the other side. It is not that the North has just destroyed them. It's literally both sides are going to limp away. The South limps away towards Fredericksburg. And so at this point, it is considered a massive Union victory because it's the first time we've beat Robert E. Lee. And it is because of this battle that Lincoln is going to issue the Emancipation Proclamation to free all the slaves and sets it up for January 1st, which is going to lead why Fredericksburg is such a big battle. Lincoln is hoping for another victory to back up the Emancipation Proclamation. It was like I said, it was the bloodiest battle for one day. 31% of all the people were casualties. That means of those armies that showed up, 1 out of 3 of you didn't walk home. It was a bloodbath. It was a bloodbath. Like I said, Bloody Lane, Burnside's Bridge. Those are all neat things to know. But now what happens is Lee is going to head off towards Fredericksburg. There is real quick before we move on, there is a picture of Bloody Lane right there with the people laying in it. And there is a picture of Burnside's Bridge right there also. So you can see that was a tiny little bridge. That was some close fighting right there. Let's get to Fredericksburg right now then. Fredericksburg, what happens is McClellan, after this at Antietam, sits around for several weeks licking his wounds. He doesn't want to continue on. And Lincoln wants somebody who will fight, who will press on, who will do the job. And so Lincoln fires McClellan and brings in General Burnside, Ambrose Burnside. Ambrose Burnside is, as you see right there in the bottom, one of the ugliest men you have ever seen. And in fact, if you notice his little beard right there, it comes down and then makes ham hocks. And then goes up here with nothing right here. Not the best thing you do if you're wanting to pick up girls. If you're wanting to scare little people away, it probably works, but it not really helping him out here. But if you notice the hair coming off, he's bald up top, but the hair coming off the side right there is just massive. And so the soldiers started calling this part of our head, because of burned sides, these began to refer to as our side burns. And that's why any hair coming down right here is still to this day referred to you as your side burns, because of that man right there, General Burnsides. So interesting things, how it's all these things are out through history all the time in our things. So Lincoln puts Burnsides in command. And at that time, Lee backs up all the way to Fredericksburg and crosses the river. They burn the bridge at this time. By the time that Burnsides is in charge and he comes all the way down to Fredericksburg, There's no way to cross the river. So with Lee on the other side, he could go around, he could go a different way, but Burnside is not the brightest general. He's just going to try and get things. He's just going to keep pushing on without any thought to it. And so he sends off to get pontoons to make a bridge, a pontoon bridge across the water. Problem being, you've got to go to Washington to get these pontoon bridges, and you got to float them down the rivers to where they're going to be at Fredericksburg. So what you just did was you gave 3 weeks to Lee to make defenses on the other side. They dug rifle pits into the side of the river. They fortified the whole town of Fredericksburg to where they took over, made little rifle pits, made little ambush spots, hid up in buildings, all the sort of things they could do to set themselves up. They are given a massive amount of time to get ready for this battle. And so what ends up happening then is finally the pontoons show up. They, at 3 o'clock in the morning, start to have the engineers start to construct a bridge. And after a few hours, the engineers refuse to go back out there because the Confederate sharpshooters are shooting across the river and killing everybody that is out there. And so the engineers say they're not going to do it. Well, a man by the name of John Adams, and yes, he is a descendant of John Adams, the president, and John Quincy Adams, his son. A man by the name of John Adams from Massachusetts says that he will lead his group over in the pontoon boats. They get into these pontoon boats and begin to row across 400 yards of river while being shot at in a rowboat, the pontoon, which is slower than a rowboat, just inching. Soldiers are being shot left and right, they're dropping. But John Adams leads his men all the way over there, and then they get out of the boats. They fly a black flag, which means they're not going to give any mercy. They don't have enough people to take prisoners. If they see you, they're going to shoot you and kill you. And so you get into some fierce fighting in the South knowing they're not going to take prisoners. And so John Adams is able to establish a beachhead, and then you've got the town right there. If they continue to cross over, they're going to shoot from the windows of the town. And so John Adams and his men start to go into the town, and this is the first time in American history we have house-to-house fighting. Modern warfare of what it is today starts right here. They literally go house to house, room to room, and they are just going in, people being shot. And this is the first time. And John Adams is the one who realizes that you can't fight in groups and battalions and brigades and stuff. And he begins to break up his men into groups of 2 and go into houses and clear houses and work at house. And so they spend a whole day clearing the town. And when the town is cleared and everything, then the troops start to come over. Well, Lee is now just outside of the town, and he's had, so much time. He has set up his defensive line at the top of a hill outside of Fredericksburg. Murray's Rise is the name of it. It's just a little hill out the top. But what they don't know, the North doesn't know, is there is a stone wall at the top of that hill. So they send the North, once they spend another day there, they spend the night. Then the next morning, Burnside decides he is going to take that hill and he's going to get rid of Lee. And he sends his guys, a whole massive amount of them, up the hill. They're going up the hill, and they're just one right after another, just dropping. All the shots that they are firing at the Southern soldiers are hitting a stone wall. Every one of the shots the Southern are firing are hitting a man. Men are just dropping. Behind the stone wall, on another rise, they had set up the cannons for the South. The Southern cannons are dropping grape shot in right amongst our guys. And it's a slaughter fest. And they can't get to the top of the hill because of that stone wall. And then Burnside, instead of evaluating what was the problem, he sends another wave of them up. And they're going up the hill, and they're just falling everywhere. They're not going to make it. He decides to send the third group. And in the third group of guys, this was John Adams and his guys again. They have been resting all morning because they were the ones that fought yesterday. But Burnside is destroying. He's going to, in this one battle, just lose 13,000 men in one battle. He's going to keep sending it. He sends the third wave up the hill. As they're going up the hill, John Adams, he's the leader, but he sees the flag bearer drop the flag, and he picks up the flag and he continues on up the hill and everything. Um, the flag bearer that he picks up wasn't the original. By the time John Adams picks it up, that group is on the 8th flag bearer going up that hill. That means 8 times the guy who's carrying it has been shot and killed, and somebody else picked it up. Well, John Adams picks it up, and he's charging up the hill now. All bullets are being shot at him, trying to take down the flag bearer, and he sees another group. Their guy falls on the flag. John Adams literally picks up both flags and starts to run up the hill. And at this point, he sees the stone wall, and he realizes there's no winning. There's no way to take this victory. So he takes this flag and he runs over to this little dip down in the ground next to this fence. And all his guys start diving down into there. And now as they're stuck down in there, the bullets are flying over top of their heads. If they get up and they go forward, they will die. If they get up and they go backwards to retreat, they will die. It was late in the evening by the time he had sent this third wave up. They get pinned down. And now they're there all night on the side of this hill. And the thing was so hard to imagine about this night is all the cries and the moans of the wounded and the dying. They're hearing all these people just groan and moan and die. And if you've ever been hurt and you've ever been in pain, there's one thing you want more than anything. It's water. Just to quench your thirst, to stop that. And all night long, these Northern soldiers are pinned down, and they can hear these guys of all the groups that have gone up before them laying there moaning and groaning. And then dawn breaks. And they said you could see the frost even on some of the dead soldiers, and the others just moaning. And there's no point in getting up and going up the hill. You'll die. Go back and you'll die. And all of a sudden, one man, a Southern by the name of Richard Kirkland from South Carolina. He had been reading his Bible the day before. He was sitting there all night thinking about what he'd read and what was going on. And Richard Kirkland, all of a sudden, jumps the wall and starts running towards the Northern soldiers. Some of the Northern soldiers leveled their guns looking at him, ready to take him down. And they saw him slide up to the first Northern soldier, pull out his canteen, and begin to give the man a drink. Giving a man who's dying his last dying wish, just have some water. He went from man to man until his canteen was empty. And then Richard Kirkland runs back and jumps back over the wall. And then, all of a sudden, he jumps back again, and his arms are out like this. And all the Southern soldiers had hung their canteens on his arms. And he starts going soldier to soldier to soldier, giving them a drink of water. At this moment, the Northern troops all stood up and began to applaud the selfless man's actions. The Southern troops stood up on the other side of the stone wall and began to applaud what Richard Kirkland was doing. At this moment, there was no more fighting. And against Burnside's order, those troops marched back down the hill. The Southern troops marched off. Both sides leave, but with the North losing 13,000 men because of Burnside's blindness. It's considered a Southern victory. It's considered one of the most selfless acts of all the war. That leads us all the way up to 1863, and that's where we will pick up next week. Thank you.